morning, everyone. I want to welcome you to the Tuesday, May 14th, 2019 Hampstead School Board meeting. Melissa, will you call the roll, please?
Yes. David Smith.
Here.
James Sweeney.
Here.
Caitlin Parnell.
Here.
Karen Yasenka.
Here.
And Jason Giard.
Here.
Thank you. And Pinkerton Academy Student Liaison, Emma Johnston. Here. Thank you. And also seated at the board table is Assistant Superintendent, Dr. Roxanne Wilson.
We'll do the pledge. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
In your packets, you have meeting minutes from our April 9th meeting, both a regular meeting and a non-public session set of minutes. So, take a few minutes to review. I have a motion to approve the minutes.
I move to accept the two sets, April 9th, public and regular, and non-meeting.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Okay. All in favor? Oh, Jason, you have to abstain. Sorry.
It's abstaining.
Okay. No opposition. Oh, abstentions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have administrative reports.
It's been a while since we've been reporting out to you, it seems like, so.
I'm so sorry. I forgot to ask about public comments.
That's okay,
Was
Madam
this a-
Chair. There were none tonight.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. Sorry.
Two demerits.
I know, I'm failing hardcore.
Hi. You have my report, so I'm not going to run through every detail of the report, but there's a couple things that I wanted to ask the board to take a look at. One in particular is preschool and kindergarten numbers are up quite a bit. In fact, I talked to Dr. Wilson today about the kindergarten enrollments. I'm going to ask the board to consider allowing me to exceed the maximum for our full-day K classrooms because of the number of enrollments. I know as of today, I have 90 names sitting in that pool. If I spread them amongst 5 groups, that's exactly 18, which is the policy. I do expect that some of the ones that have registered will probably end up going elsewhere, and I also anticipate more arriving this summer. To me, the logical solution, discussing with my administrative team and even in a little bit of a conversation with the kindergarten team, is to allow us to put 20 into the full-day K rooms. What drives that is I have an awful lot of parents that would like to have their children into the full-day K, willing to pay the tuition piece that does go with it. So our policy does say that the board needs to speak on that to give, I don't know the exact policy code.
What policy are we waiting?
I didn't write down the code number, but it's the one on class size. Okay, but I can find the answer to that question for you. But that's in my first one there. Going on with the report, preschool numbers are filling up nicely this year. We already have 43 signed up for preschool this fall, which is a nice number to be at this time of the year. That's quite a bit more than we've had in the past. On the good news front, I gave Melissa a copy of this report here, which is a report that I spoke to when Ellen Cabral arranged for the National School Recycling people to come in and work with us. They did the garbage gorillas, and they actually did an assessment of our school. We've been doing this for the last few years, and this is the first year we've got an absolute perfect score on all of our recycling efforts. So if you do see the report, if you open it up to just inside the cover page, that collection, education, participation, motivation, and evaluation. We got 100 points, which is great. And as far as some of the pieces, the recommendations, there's some pieces that we've already talked about doing at the central school. So not only did we get a nice score, but some recommendations on how to improve it. There's also a copy of a press release that came out from the NRAA, which stands for Northeast Resource Recovery Association. So there's a couple photos of some of your third graders, if you happen to know a third grader on the back. I know a couple people at the table know some third graders, so you may see a familiar face or two. The other thing I just wanted to point out, we've just finished, today I think we kind of closed out the last couple of students that are finishing the state assessment. And looking ahead, Dr. Cheney has got a couple of fascinating things that she's doing for us. She's actually going to serve as the International Literacy Association's team leader for the Northeast region. What that means is, that's code for, we're going to get a lot of books for the Hampstead Central School, which will be for our school to go into our classroom libraries, as well as stuff that we can offer to families. And what this does, it brings you a lot of the new literature that comes out in children's literature of varying levels. She's been doing this in her schools up in Maine, so she brought it here and applied. So this is a great thing for us as a community to promote literacy in our schools. And I'll probably get yelled at for announcing this, but she does do the walk on Friday for her doctorate, to get the cute little hat. What is it called? The hat?
It's not a hat.
Okay, what is it called, Dr. Wilson? No, you have one. You have one. Okay, so yes, she'll be officially walking the stage as Dr. Cheney on Friday of this week. We haven't really said too much publicly, but I figured I might as well just let the cat out of the bag. So
Did you also notice that I think there were only 4 national awards for this literacy program that went out?
yes,
And we were one of them.
yes.
Thank you.
She's taking this on because the responsibility for us is to, of course, share lots of great literature, but to provide reviews. So since she has this passion for literacy with her background, she's actually going to be working with some of our teachers to do some reviews on the new titles. So it's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, I just would like to note that we might be at our max for our policy of 18 students.
Yes.
All right, so I just want to make it clear that, we're running out of room. Again, if we have to start waiving policy for kids, there's definitely a need for more space at the central school.
I think in other years, if I had a classroom, I would probably be asking the board to consider adding an additional classroom at this point of the game, or maybe wait until August so I get really solid numbers. But it is definitely something that is not possible.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome, Mr. Girard. It's very nice to have you with us, and I've known you as a dad of an HMS student, so it's very nice to have you join our family. Thank you. I'm very proud to announce that the New England League of Middle School has awarded Hampstead Middle School a 3-year distinction as a New England League of Middle Schools Spotlight School from 2019 to 2022. They will send a representative for our next school board meeting to do the formal presentation of the award. The reviewers, as I told you before, spent a full day meeting with parents and students and teachers and administrators and support staff, and they commended our school's warm and caring environment, strong culture of academics, community, and civic pride. Additionally, a strong proponent of our student success was the community's support of financial resources and our philosophy that's doing what is best for kids. HMS was commended for an exceptional amount of academic, social, emotional, and other curricular initiatives that promote students' needs, a safe and supportive school environment, and a 21st century learning community. Congratulations to our entire school community for providing effective instruction, collaboration, teaming, and solid understanding of the young adolescent. So I'm very proud of our team. I want to thank the principal's leadership team who orchestrated a lot of the application process, and Assistant Principal Mrs. Joseph, who took the lead on this initiative once again. So I'm very happy to report that. Next Thursday, Emma, you'll remember, you were part of this 2 years ago as a scholar leader for the New England League of Middle Schools has an annual Scholar Leader Dinner, which Emma was one of them just 2 years ago. And this year, the school faculty voted in Anthony LeBlanc and Sophia Phaneuf to represent Hampstead Middle School in this presentation at the Hilton in Manchester. And they will be there with their parents and a teacher that has inspired them the most. Sophia has selected Heather Mayu, her ventures teacher, and Anthony has selected Mr. Adam Hathaway, his central school teacher and track coach. So that will be a nice evening for us all next Thursday. Another fun thing that happened, and a good connection to the Hampstead Middle School curriculum and the Central School, our Spanish cohort. That's our 7th grade team that has Spanish all year long, high achieving in ELA and in Spanish. They hiked over to the Central School through our wonderful egress road and spent time reading Spanish and interacting with our preschoolers about Spanish stories. And our kids loved it, and the little ones received it with a lot of happy praise. So we'll be doing that more as time goes on. It's good for our kids to have the opportunity to practice, and for the little ones to see that continuation of those skills. We're very happy to report that Mrs. Griffin applied for the New Hampshire Classroom Growing Grant. We are one of 4 New Hampshire schools that were awarded this growing grant, and it is a soil-less growing system that will be housed in the 8th grade science lab, and it gives kids a direct connection to their food supply, encourages problem solving, critical skills, combining their physical science, chemistry, math, and life sciences. So this is a 3-year grant, and they will give us all the hardware and all the stuff we need. We just have to supply the seeds and things that are expendable. So bravo to Mrs. Griffin for going out and taking advantage of this opportunity. On next Thursday, on May 23rd, I'd like to invite you all, if your schedules avail yourselves. We will have our Memorial Day Assembly, which we do every year. And this year, the guest speaker will be my husband, Mark Denola. His father was one of the commanders of the USS Thresher that went down in 1963. It was our first nuclear submarine, and every year we have a memorial service, and my husband was a speaker last year at the naval base, because that's where his dad went out, and he was only 7 when his dad perished. So you may have heard a lot about the Thresher, and Arlington, we're finally getting a memorial for them. So he will be presenting and talking to the students about the ultimate sacrifice. And we have the presentation of the colors from Pinkerton. We have music, and it looks like it will be a meaningful remembrance for Memorial Day. So please come if you can at 9 a.m. This Friday, we have Take Flight, that field trip that we did last year for the first time. It's a high ropes course in Maine, and all of our 6th graders and the staff. It was a great risk-taking adventure, but we had helmets on, and I went as well, and students helped me along. So it is had a lot of positive feedback last year, so we are going to be doing that again this year. And it's about communication, trust, leadership, team building, pushing yourself when it's uncomfortable. And if you're not comfortable, you can stay right at the low course. That's just a little jump. So, Freedom Trail, we're doing our Freedom Trail again. We always do this, June 14th in Boston, which lines up with American colonial life in our curriculum. So that is in the works as well. Graduation, is the 14th. And right now, we are at the final stages of welcoming students into the National Junior Honor Society. We have a a faculty council that is anonymous, that reads all the applications, and the students list all of their participation. You were part of this too, Emma. That includes academic merit, student leadership, service, citizenship, and character. The induction ceremony will be Monday, June 3rd. I'd like to just thank the PTSA for supplying such a wonderful staff appreciation week last week. We had kids putting out the red carpet, taking pictures of the staff coming in, posing for the paparazzi. We had a wonderful lunch, messages all over the school thanking teachers and staff for everything that they do. So I'd like to thank the PTSA for so much work. Once we disappeared at night, they came in and surprised us with things all week long. That's the rest of my report. Is there any questions, or are there any questions?
I have a question. I don't know if it's for you or Mr. Collins. Chorus singing at the town, is the chorus singing at the town Memorial Day services? Is that true? Central School. Central School is.
It will be Central School this time.
Central School at the town hall here?
Wherever,
Yeah,
I know Amanda
here.
starts working on it with Natalie Gap.
I think it's here and it's outside, right?
Yes.
And what date is that?
Yeah.
It's on Memorial Day,
On
the
Memorial
Monday.
Day. Okay, just so people know that our kids take an active role in our community events.
Oh, absolutely. Our kids were at Fisher Cats last night. For the third year in a row, they were rained out to sing the national anthem. So they sang in the stairwell, and the Fisher Cats organization gave them like tons of garb and things. They felt so bad. But no, we're there. Our kids are showing up and participating in anything that the town asks. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Right. So last Friday, Student Council held a pep rally, which was a huge success. The sports teams performed for the school along with the baton twirlers and the Milli Vanilli winners. And so from Hampstead, Hannah Peterson and Chloe True, they were the chairs of this committee. And they did an excellent job getting everything together with all the orders and contacting administration and everything. So speaking of student council and class office, this time of year is time for elections for those two clubs. And so last week the freshmen held their class office and student council elections, and so congratulations to all who ran. And this week's elections are for the sophomore class, which is my class, and next week's are juniors. And so during these elections, students running campaign for a week before, hanging up posters, and they do it by other means. I know some are handing out bracelets and stickers and pins, and so good luck to all running. This coming Thursday and Friday is the faculty play, which should be really fun. I'm going to that on Thursday, where teachers and staff from all over the school take a script and add some humor to it. They tie it back to Pinkerton. So this will be a fundraiser for multiple scholarships that the faculty give out. I think last year one of my teachers had said that they raised over $5,000 for that. Next Tuesday is the Youth Day of Giving Back, and so students from all grades can sign up to go to various locations across New Hampshire and volunteer all day. I'm doing that. I did it last year too, and it was a really great experience. Also, spring sports have started and they're almost coming to an end already, as there are only 17 days of school left until finals. All teams are doing well, specifically track, who has their last few meets coming up, but they are looking good for their states. And finally, as I mentioned, the end of the school year is quickly approaching, which also means graduation, although early I wanted to mention that the date is June 10th. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to ask Erin Gallagher to come up and to talk a little bit about her compliance report so that the board is aware. A lot of what happens in special ed is about students, but at the same time, it's also very driven by compliance of paperwork and the process. And in your report, she has indicated that, again, they've been recognized very positively in terms of their response to the compliance. And if you could take a few minutes.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. The DOE does a variety of different compliance reports for all the districts. The first set of reports that we received have to do with early transitions. That's considered indicator number 12. They have various ones with different numbers. And what that means is that we are transitioning children from early supports and services, such as Easter seals as an example, into our preschool in a timely fashion so that if they're identified, they have an IEP in place as soon as they turn 3 and they start with their program. So they gave us a report for 2016-17 and the 2017-2018 school year, and we were 100% in compliance for those reports. The next one was an out-of-district program that was audited by the New Hampshire DOE, and they chose one of Hsd's student files and did a review to see if everything was in order and if everything was done accurately. And they concluded that there were no identified findings of noncompliance. So that was a great thing for both the school and Hsd. And then we also received district determinations, which we receive every year, and that compiles a whole bunch of performance plan indicators. And I can just kind of read what the titles are. And the best that you can do is meets requirements. And I'll just give you, there's a lot of pages here, so just give me 1 second. Okay, well, I'll start with, they do have the district profile for the past 7 years on one of the pages that you have in your handout, and from 2010 to 11 school year all the way to the current one that they provided, we've met requirements all along. So we've not had to make any corrections, and we've been doing everything in a timely fashion. And I'm standing here giving you this report, but I also want to thank all the staff within the special ed department, because it's their hard work, in addition to providing the great instruction and consultation and all that they do. On top of that, there's a lot of paperwork in special ed. So I want to commend all of them for the hard work that they do and their diligence in making sure that we're meeting all the timelines.
And thank you to you and Francine Flynn, who's the assistant director of special ed, because they're the ones who are working with all the staff. But kudos to the staff, because it's remarkable year after year after year, Karen,
Right.
That you're in compliance. And there's always one little thing they look for in a file, and you could be out of compliance for a very simple reason. So thank you very much for that hard work.
All right, thanks. While I'm up here, could I make one quick statement, because I received some information from Community Crossroads, who's an area agency that does a lot of work with families of students with disabilities. And I just want to highlight that I have everything uploaded on our special ed website page within the district under events. So there's quite a few things. If any families are listening and they're interested in looking at the events, I'll just read what the titles are. It's real brief. There's a Disney dance, a karaoke night, Canopy Lake party, caregiver sunset cruise, oldies night, and a New Hampshire Fisher Cats outing. So just as part of the community outreach, I'd like people to know that they could check out those events that are on the website. All right? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think that's it for administrative reports.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So next, we need to do federal funding authorization. I'm going to read my notes.
This is a perfunctory authorization every year that allows us to accept grants on behalf of district, federal, and grant funding. And there's a sample language there for a motion.
Yes.
And it will allow us to keep continuing the managing and the grant process going.
Okay, so I'd like a motion to authorize Dr. Metzler, Jeff Dowd, Tom Geary, and the Assistant Superintendent, whoever that should be, to apply for and receive on behalf of the district federal and state grants and funding, which will include approving and signing OBM Forms 1, Forms 3, and Forms 4, and to file such authorization with the New Hampshire Department of Education.
So moved.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I just have one question on the wording, where it says to authorize Dr. Metzler Jeff Dowd, Tom Gary, and the assistant superintendent. Does that mean we can't until there is a assistant superintendent? That you need all four?
I
Or is it
believe-
saying one of any of those?
Yes.
One of any.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the clarification.
Yep.
All in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. Next, we have tuition rates. Mr. Dowd, you want to come up and talk to us about these?
Good evening. My name is Jeff Dowd. I'm the district CFO, BA. And in front of you should have a memorandum dated May 13, 2019, with the Hempstead tuition rates proposed for the 1920 school year, along with the historical rates for 2018-19, 17-18, and 16-17. Rates are fairly in line with where they've been in the past. For those who are new to the board, these tuition rates represent what someone from out of district would be paying to tuition their student into our district. Our rates are loosely based on, as a basis, what the Department of Education has determined to be our previous year or year just ended rates by level, by elementary and middle school. We don't have an exact formula for what those costs are going to be, especially because Pinkerton is a separate private tuitioned school. We do exclude, or the Department of Education excludes from its calculation of these costs, tuition for outside schools, tuition for Pinkerton, and it excludes transportation, which makes sense because those really don't apply for, let's say, for an out-of-district student coming into our district. So I've taken essentially the Department of Education rates, looked where the budget is, enrollments, and rolled those numbers forward to what I would approximately anticipate those costs to be at the elementary and at the middle school level. And you have those in front of you. For kindergarten, $9,618, elementary, $19,234, middle school, $19,474, special education, $38,709. You'll note the special education rate does not include costs associated with specialized services, specialized transportation, or one-to-one assistance, so it includes a level of support that would be typically provided, but does not include any of those outside services which might be ancillary to educating that student. Are there any questions on the rates?
Just for clarification, these rates are used if there's an out-of-district student who comes into the district. Usually you are always informed about that. And we also use this as the basis for our policy where faculty may have their children come to and attend. There's a proration part to that. So that's why these rates are done every year.
We need a motion to approve these, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Can I have a motion to approve the 2019-2020 tuition rates as presented? So moved. Have a second?
Second.
Does anyone have any more discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Thank you.
Well done. There's a separate memorandum you have in your packet dated May 14, 2019 from me, containing the general fund financial report and budget transfers. I'd like to call that to your attention. So the revenue expenditure report is included as it typically is. However, I do have a request for 3 budget transfers that exceed the amount which I'm allowed to transfer and require board approval. That policy is policy DJB. And the transfers are, there are 3 of them. First is $14,000, which moves money within the 1200 account function to an in-district services account. We have some surplus, not surplus, we have some available funding in residential services. Second is for $49,000. This is the specific transfer to cover the board-approved 18-19 social worker hire. So we're looking to transfer into a 21-22-112 function, which is guidance salaries from general education, 1100-112, where we have some funding available for that as well. The third is $37,000 from our facility maintenance salaries, where we have some funding available. Sorry, that's reverse. That should be a to and a from and a to. So it's going to be coming from 2610 facilities maintenance services going to 2660 facilities services, and that covers the cost of our board-approved SRO contract. So if these transfers meet with your approval, I have a thing down below if you would care to make a motion just approving those transfers as outlined in the May 14th memorandum from me. Otherwise, I'm happy to entertain any questions you may have.
Does anyone have questions before we?
Mr. Dowd, I might have missed it. Did you transfer the two,
Bottom,
the function codes there?
on the bottom, right?
Yes.
Okay, the bottom ones?
Yep.
This one
Okay,
here.
Yeah.
all right.
Just the bottom one. And
be a
you'll have
from
and a
to,
to.
Dr.
Okay.
Wilson and I are used to seeing a form where the from is first.
Okay.
So we're all used, anyone who's made a budget transfer knows the from is first and then the to goes second. And silly me, I got through 2 of them and followed up the last one, so
Okay.
corrected it though.
Okay, can I have a motion to transfer the budget transfers that are identified in the CFO's May 14th memo as presented to us? Anybody? Second. Discussion or question?
Nope,
Oh, okay,
Sorry.
sorry.
jumped ahead.
That's okay. All in favor?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Second to last, I also have an SRO bill in the, you'll note in the voucher listing that's going around for the student resource officer for the school, made payable to the town of Hampstead. So we're now entering into our first opportunity to reimburse the town for those expenses. So will you need me?
Yes, if you could stay, please.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next up is the K-8 performance assessments with Mrs. Buco.
Good evening. I'm here this evening with Brian Dine, our 8th grade language arts teacher, and Michael Torelli, our Central School art teacher, to give you an update on the development of K-8 performance assessment that are measuring students' mastery of competencies. And in our presentation tonight, we're going to highlight why we're doing this work, why are we developing performance assessments and rubrics, what are competencies, what are performance assessments, what are rubrics, what was the training process that we used for teachers across the district, what was the development process that teachers undertook to develop performance assessments and rubrics, and Michael and Brian have some examples of performance assessments to share with you, and then we'll talk briefly about next steps. So why are we doing this work? The work in New Hampshire actually began back in 2005. High schools in New Hampshire were required to develop course-based competencies. And high schools were given 3 years to develop their competencies. And then there was a new set of minimum standards that went into effect July 1st, 2014, which required kindergarten through 8th grade schools to have a curriculum, plus develop district competencies for our K-8 program, and then develop assessments to measure students' accomplishment of these competencies. So in previous years, you may remember, we brought to you each of our curriculums across the district, science, social studies, language arts, et cetera, guidance. And so we did meet that July 1st, 2017 deadline, and now we're in the process of developing these performance assessments. Another reason why we're developing performance assessments and rubrics is because of our vision of student learning, which was developed in 2017 by administrators and staff. And if you look at the second bullet, where our vision of student learning talks about students demonstrating competency by developing and applying their knowledge and skills to solve problems in authentic ways. So that's another reason why we're doing all this work. So what are competencies and performance assessments? These are the two definitions that we've been using in our district for a couple of years now. And looking at competencies, we're actually looking for students to transfer their knowledge and skills in and across content areas, and then performance assessments measure students' mastery at these competencies. But we're looking for the upper levels of cognitive rigor. We're looking for students to analyze, cite evidence, compare, contrast, critique, create, etc. And with the minimum standards, competencies are locally determined, but the New Hampshire Department of Ed has provided school districts with model competencies in English language arts, math, science, and the arts. And in our district, we are using those model competencies. And these model competencies were developed by educators and teacher organizations in the state of New Hampshire, such as the the New Hampshire Teachers of Mathematics. This slide has two examples of competencies, the 7th and 8th grade literature and informational text competency, and a 3rd through 5 science competency. And these competencies require that higher order thinking and can be applied across multiple content areas. And looking at performance assessments, again, our definition that we're using in our district. This is a multi-step assignment. We have specific criteria, specific expectations, and we're, again, looking for students to transfer their knowledge, apply these complex skills to create a refined and original product. And we're looking at measuring real-world skills and knowledge. And teachers have developed rubrics to assess students' mastery of these competencies. And it's in the form of a grid and everyone uses the same template for developing competencies, where we have our standards and then what would be expected for a child to achieve a 4, a 3, or 2, a 1 on this performance assessment. And a 4 would be advanced, 3 proficient, 2 would be nearly proficient, and 1 would be novice. And we have very specific criteria for each of the levels for each of the standards. And looking at the training process, we actually began training back in school year 2016-17, and we spent a lot of time that year talking about why we're doing this work, the what is expected of our curriculum committees and our grade level teams, the timeline for doing this work. We looked at lots of examples that were provided by the New Hampshire Department of Education and other educational organization. We've been using a lot of resources from the Center of Collaborative Education. In July 2017, we had 14 administrators and teachers participate in a 3-day competency-based learning design studio, and last summer we had 11 staff and administrators participate as well. And then we have our district competency-based learning committee to make sure, to help us with this work that we're doing across the district. This year, we have 6 staff from both buildings participating in the Quality Performance Assessment Institute. We have 6 teachers attending 4 sessions throughout the year, and they're bringing back the knowledge gained to share with grade level teams and content area teachers. And I have to commend Sarah Weiscarver, who is here tonight. She's our Central School Ventures teacher. She has been a wonderful mentor for the district in this work that we're doing with competencies and performance assessments and rubrics because of the experience she had in her previous district. So thank you, Sarah. You have been wonderful. And then, so in the whole development process, we examined New Hampshire model competencies. We identified those competencies that align with our curriculum units. We looked at examples from other districts, and now we are developing and are still developing those performance assessments and rubrics. And we've been using a lot of our early release days, professional development days to do this work. At middle school, the curriculum committees meet twice a month, so they've been using some of their curriculum meetings to do this work. And we are using a very specific protocol for validating our performance assessments and calibrating our performance assessments. And when we go through a validation process, we have multiple grade level teams at central school meeting, and at middle school we have 2 content area teams that are meeting to go through the validation process using this protocol. And with the protocol, we're looking to make sure that these performance assessments are aligned to 21st century skills. The students are using higher order thinking skills. We make sure that the directions are clear, free of wordiness, the rubric's clear, and we want to make sure the tasks are engaging, and definitely that the tasks allow for accommodations with students with IEP or 504 plans. So, for example, in if we're validating a 3rd grade performance assessment, we have the 2nd grade team and the 4th grade team validating this performance assessment together. And at middle school, we have our language arts and social studies teams working together to validate performance assessments. And they've also been working together to develop a common performance assessments, a social studies writing, for example. And for the calibration, again, we have those cross-grade level teams and the content area teams. They score a few anonymous student pieces independently. And then we compare the scoring and see if there's any differences within the scoring that may lead to that we have to maybe tweak the performance assessment or tweak the rubric. And the goal of the calibration is making sure we have reliable scoring of our performance assessments at each grade level and across content areas. And we're also using a very common template for developing the performance assessment. And in that particular template that we're using, the teachers have to identify the content competencies, the standards. They give a detailed description of the performance assessment, detailed teacher directions, student directions, etc. And now Michael, and then Brian will share with you an example of a performance assessment.
So I've had the pleasure of working with Doris for 26 years. And she threw this all together, or I shouldn't say threw it all together, but she's been spearheading this performance assessment piece. One of the so many initiatives, countless initiatives I've had the chance to work with her over the years on. And I just want to say thanks, Doris. It's been a pleasure. And you're going to be missed next year. I don't know what we're going to do. And that was comprehensive. I'm really not sure what I should say about my performance assessment now, other than it's a visual arts-based performance assessment. Aligned with the unit on community. It also covers some social studies as well. You'll be able to see the end result of this particular performance assessment as a ceramic self-portrait at our annual community presentation. So I'm giving a plug for the community presentation, which you've all been invited to. You can walk in the parade with us, wave. And the ceramic self-portraits will be on exhibit there. And just as Doris said, I ran this particular lesson through the performance assessment process. It's been validated. I have a rubrics. I use that rubrics now I get a better sense of where my students are at. I can say what I love about the performance assessment process is it directly affects what I do in the classroom with the students. And for that, I thank you for pulling this together, Doris. So it's been very, very helpful. And I think that's
Thank you.
Hi, how you doing? Brian Dine, 8th grade language arts teacher at Hampstead Middle. I think the best way to sort of describe the performance assessment that I've created is really the process by which it was created, and Doris talked a lot about that already. But what I really like about competency-based education is that I don't know that it's vastly different within a classroom, but it's different in terms of accountability on behalf of teachers as well as students. So the performance assessment that I collaborated with the social studies team teacher on was actually an assignment that she's done often for many years, and that's her oratorical speech contest for the VFW. And actually Emma was a champ 3 years ago at the state level. We had a runner-up this year and a 4th place finish. We always do well at the state level. But at the beginning of the year, I tackle a lot of nonfiction reading and writing, and I do a research project. I've just found with 8th graders to try to do a full-blown research project works better in the fall than it does in May, June. So we tackle a lot of those skills at the beginning of the year, evaluating sources, taking notes, incorporating information. And with language arts curriculum, it spirals often. You know, we don't start at the beginning of the year and say, well, we've gone over the 26 comma rules. You're proficient now. You know how to use commas correctly. So it's often that we have to come back to these skills. So the oratorical contest in the social studies aspect, the students had to identify some aspect of the Constitution that they wanted to create a speech about. So it sort of lent itself nicely to a lot of the research skills that we front-loaded at the beginning of the year. So for our very first competency, we decided to work together between language arts and social studies. So Doris talked about that transfer of knowledge. It was nice to say, all right, you know, we did all of this work for citation and note-taking and annotation and incorporating information, you know, earlier this year. You're going to have a little bit of review, but it was really training wheels off. You're going to have to track down information about the Constitution from reliable sources, extract that information, and incorporate it thoughtfully into a written speech. So it was that great transfer of knowledge. Sometimes when students write in language arts, they walk out of the room and say, oh, well, I do that in that room, and now I'm in a different space, and it's a different set of skills. It's not. It's just sort of teaching that, you know, that those reading and writing skills are transferable. It may look a little bit different depending on the genre and subject, So it was nice to have the students walk into social studies and say, I have this before, I can apply it in this subject area. And for the past 2 years, when we implemented this competency, we gave the students independent time to find their sources and conduct their research. And then it was over 2 class periods, one in social studies, one in language arts, that they actually sat down and wrote the speech. And in terms of that accountability, it's, when the social studies teacher and I were creating this performance assessment, it was, I have these standards in mind, I have this assignment that I believe assesses these standards, does it actually do what we want it to do? And through the validation process that Doris described, we get to take our assessments in front of our other colleagues and get that valuable feedback to say, this part of your rubric looks really great, but I'm not sure what part of this assessment reaches this standard as identified in your rubric. So you can adjust that assessment, so when you give that assessment, this is going to hit these skills, or it's going to address this content knowledge. And then the other accountability piece is on the students. You have that very specific rubric where you can say, you're proficient in this skill, you're developing here, and here's how you're going to get here. And it's not once the assessment is over, we don't say, oh, well, you didn't meet proficiency, we're moving on. It's no, we're going to stop and make sure you attain proficiency in this skill before we continue. So it's been really valuable in being able to collaborate and then see that transfer of knowledge. So hope that helps.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I think as Michael and Brian pointed out, we're not necessarily developing totally new assessments. Teachers are looking at what assessments do we already have in place, and are those assessments aligning with our grade level competencies?
Correct. I would say, if anything, we're taking what we've done before and making it that much better.
Mm-hmm. That's true. So as far as next steps, we're going to continue developing performance assessment to measure students' mastery of grade level competencies. And it's time for us to also re-examine and update our report cards to reflect the work that we're doing with competencies performance assessments and to reflect our vision of student learning. So any questions you have this evening about our work?
I don't have a question, but I think I'd like to join in on commending you on this. This seems, at least to the layman, as a huge undertaking. And it sounds like this has been collaborative across both schools and administrative. So thank you for taking care of all of this. Thank you. I don't know if anyone has any questions.
Just add a comment. I think when we started this work a couple of years ago, one of the very first validation exercises we had was Mr. Torelli. And I remember observing, sitting in on that, and how it was uncomfortable for people at first because they're not used to being in that environment to share their work. And in the 2 years of time that Mr. Dine has talked about, it has become a true collaborative learning process that everyone has strengthened their skills as teachers for doing this. So I think everyone's been learning through this process, and I just remember that very first validation that we did, and everyone's grown from that. So, thank you.
Yeah, it was pretty scary the very first time we did a validation. But people quickly got over their fear.
Sarah was there, too.
Yes, Sarah was.
She's not that scared.
No, she's not. Thank you.
Thank you.
We just wanted to give you an appreciation of all the work that we do for that performance assessment, because you keep hearing about it.
Right.
But you never really heard about it in a little more depth.
Oh, this was great. Thank you. Next up, the data governance plan, Dr. Dancy.
In your packet,
Half of our packet.
Tell us about this.
Good evening.
David looks excited about this. I gotta tell you.
I just wrote one for my company, so.
I can guarantee you my presentation will not be near as exciting as what you just saw. But I do thank you for providing time for me to share an overview of the Hempstead School District Data Governance Plan as required by RSA 18966. Many of you may remember my presentation in January concerning House Bill 1612, an act relative to data security in schools. The bill was passed and became RSA 18966, Student and Teacher Information Protection Data Inventory Security Plan. This state law requires each local education agency to develop a detailed security plan to present to the school board that includes privacy compliance standards, privacy and security audits, breach planning, notification and procedures, data retention, and disposition policies. The law requires that the plan be approved by the school board by June 30th of 2019 and meet the minimum standards adopted by the New Hampshire DOE. The law also necessitates updated policies which the board has already passed, EHAB, JICL, and GBEF. Finally, the law requires an inventory of digital tools that collect student data with assurances that these tools protect data and do not release to other vendors. I'm doing the really abbreviated version because you don't want to hear the whole thing.
I appreciate that.
Certainly. I do want to give you a little bit of backstory of what's happened this year since I presented the last time. We have 2 new board members, so they may appreciate a little bit of the history here. As I stated earlier, the law was passed in June of 2018, giving school districts 1 year to develop a data governance plan that met the minimum standards set by the New Hampshire DOE to be adopted by June 30th of 2019. After a couple of rocky starts, the Chief Information Security Officer of the state of New Hampshire was enlisted in late December to create the draft of the minimum standards that were based on the National Information Security Standards. The minimum standards were finally adopted in April of 2019. Yep, April.
Last
and
month?
This is May.
All right.
Yep.
All right.
During this time, the Bedford Technology Director was able to locate a template that was used by multiple states to provide a tool whereby directors could move as quickly as possible to meet the June 30th deadline. Because other states have adopted similar laws and minimum standards, this template was deemed appropriate for our use. It needs to be understood that not everything in this plan will be active on June 30th. While most of this is part of our everyday work, new elements such as the software inventory and privacy assurances may take 3 to 4 years to be fully compliant. We're working within a state network called the New Hampshire Data Privacy Consortium to secure privacy agreements from vendors of the software we use. This takes time as a legal document must be created and then negotiated with each vendor. So it's a plan. We're going to start, we've got a lot of it done, but there are still parts of it that are going to, and every district in the state of New Hampshire is in the same boat. We're all working forward from here, except for maybe Bedford. They gotta jump on this. The plan represents our best efforts to comply with the RSA in a timely manner and ensure that data is protected and secure. This plan must be renewed each year and may be modified and approved by the board at any time. Because the elements of this plan meet the minimum standards, it should be noted that it may be added to, but probably shouldn't be taken away from. You can get tighter, but you can't get much looser. So the data governance plan is divided into 4 sections. There's an introduction, a section about data lifecycle, another section about the critical incident response, and then there's an appendices section which goes into a lot of detail about the other 3 sections. So I'll be presenting just an overview of the first 3 sections, just to kind of give you a little bit of what's in them. And the introduction details the members of the data governance team, the purpose, and the scope of the plan. I won't go into a lot of detail, but I will note that the purpose and the scope declare that all employees are to be responsible to safeguard personal identifiable data for students and staff in all forms, including, but not limited to, verbal speech, written or printed documents, emails, faxes, digital files, and online resources. So anytime we talk about student information or write about it or store documents about it, falls under this data governance plan. It's not just electronic data, even though the technology director is mentioned as the information security officer. That does not mean it's all technology related. The introduction also includes a section that cites the local policies and state and federal laws that are applicable to the plan. The introduction concludes with a section that describes the responsibility and the possible consequences for staff members concerning the protection of district data. So the big meat of the plan is the data life cycle. And you can see in your table of contents that there are a whole lot of subsections underneath of this. I've only got like 6 bullets it's a one-page summary here. The first one, identifying need and assessing systems for district requirements, is where we look for new and replacement software and devices. We kind of do an inventory of what we have and what we need and where we want to go, and we start looking for new things. So the second thing is the process for acquiring and creating new systems. There will be a new process for teachers to request software and devices so that we can be sure that they meet the data security requirements and that we're not duplicating our efforts and spending money that we don't need to. There's a section concerning the management and storage of data, including user roles and authorized access. There's another section in the security protection where we describe all the processes for both digital protection of data and personnel processes. Then there's a section called usage and dissemination, which refers to the best practices and training recommendations users should employ when maintaining data privacy and security. And finally, the archival and destruction section details the processes used to remove users, data, and devices in a secure manner and preserve data privacy. So that's the big chunk of the plan right there. The third section is the critical incident response, which is divided into 3 sections. The business continuity describes the backup systems that keep the district running in case of a critical system failure. The disaster recovery describes the process to be followed in the event of a critical system failure. And the data breach response describes the process to be followed when a data breach occurs. And these do happen everywhere, a lot. The final section are the appendices, and this is just a list that shows all of the appendices, which provide more detail and definition for all the items listed in the first 3 sections. Those are not in your packet, and there's some talk about whether or not those should be a public document or not. So, because they are much more detailed than the rest of them. Most of the others are just processes and overviews. Finally, the next steps, I presented this information to you for your review. If you have any questions, in-depth questions, please do not hesitate to email me before the next school board meeting so that I can provide you and the public the most informed answer. This is a very large document, and trying to find a really good answer for an off-the-cuff question can often be difficult. So if you do have a really detailed question, I appreciate a little bit of advance notice. In closing, I would like to remind you that this is a living document and it'll be changed on a yearly basis. You'll be seeing this as a board action item next spring and every spring thereafter, and we will continue to utilize the Technology Plan Committee and the Data Governance Plan or Committee for input and guidance. And that, I just moved right through it so that you could get it out of the way. But if you do have any questions tonight, I would be happy to answer them. We would look, this is a first read tonight, and I'd like to have a vote on it at the next board meeting.
Questions that are easy enough that they don't need an emailed response?
I told you hers was a lot more exciting than mine.
Yeah, easy questions. Okay, if not, thank you very much. Oh,
No, thank
Dr.
you.
Dancy.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll add it to the agenda for the 28th for approval.
Really appreciate all the work you've done on this, Dr. Dancy, along with the rest of the technology crew who's been helping you. This has been yeoman's work, as you know, for every school district, but to get this far, this early, I think it's a testament to you and your department.
I'm kind of blown away that this was basically April, that
So we're
that this was approved, and now we're needing to get it in place by June. So thank you.
Well,
for
and I
lots
have
of
to
work.
give kudos to the state organization that I belong to, the tech directors that are working there. We are all working in this together to provide this kind of service for our students and for our staffs. But one last, before I leave, there was one other thing that I wanted to notify you of, We have been receiving many announcements for the withdrawal plan committee to be placed on the website. I've consolidated all of that information into one announcement on the website, and I continue to add agendas and other information to that. If you'd like it moved somewhere else, please let me know, and I will move it somewhere else. But it was starting to inundate the website, and we were pushing our own things out of the way for that until I consolidated it all.
I think that's an appropriate action to keep them all together in one place. So if anyone's looking for them,
It's right there.
they're on the website.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next I wanted to have us look again at the liaison assignments that we did at our last meeting, since we now have a new member. I'm not asking anyone to give up anything that they are dearly attached to. Just to review this again, and also to, I didn't welcome you, Jason, officially. Jason Giard is our new member. I was remiss in doing that at the beginning. I feel like you've already been here for a while, you've attended 2 SAU meetings, and that's trial by fire anyways, so I just feel like you're already an old hat at this, so, but welcome. So basically the liaison assignments, if people are interested on the board, they are the contacts for these different areas. Some of these involve sometimes sitting in meetings, and participating in those. Some of them maybe require going to the SAU. Right now, I'm going to go through these real quick. We have David on facilities. He's also special needs liaison, technology. Well, Jim has technology and vouchers. The vouchers are, Jim goes down every two weeks? Is it twice a month? Once a month? And basically checks the check vouchers and looks over them. And then we are signing them. That's what we were signing today. So he has that. Karen right now is the central school liaison and also sits on the policy committee, and which meets how often? Once a month.
During the day.
During the day. And right now I am the liaison for middle school and also for the safety committee, which meets roughly quarterly. So we can talk about if anyone wants to make any changes. We have in the past also had more than one person sit on policy, so if you wanted to, you haven't even seen those yet, because we'll get into those next. And also, we don't have to change anything if we want to just keep it as is, and we can revisit it again later if anybody has, but I don't know if anyone else wants to speak to.
Third Tuesday of every month from 10:30 to 11.
Right. So, I just wanted to revisit it since we had a new member, but we don't have to make any changes.
Not unless Jason wants something. If you'd like to join policy, or if you want the central school, it's up to you. I don't want you to not have anything.
Join the policy.
You know,
Join that with Karen.
okay.
And if anybody else wants to give anything up, take a little off their plate, I'm fine with that as well.
Okay. I think that's a good place to start, and then we can go from there.
Middle school, 10:30 to 11:30, we have one more meeting, and then we don't start up until September.
Perfect. And you walked into that.
Okay. So that's that. Next, we wanted to, Roxanne, talk about summer hours for year-round staff. I think is next.
Yes, I've actually brought this forth.
Here we go.
And have spoken about this a couple of times, and when I bring it forth in Hampstead, it wasn't received 100% for administrative or secretarial support. Well, this is like the third year that I've tried to bring it forth, and I really feel as though we need to do this for at least 1 year to evaluate it. We do this practice in Timberlane. We've been doing it, I don't know, 5 years maybe. And what it allows is what we do is we close the schools on Friday. And that allows all of the custodial staff and whatnot to really get into the schools without any administrative staff or anyone coming in or any appointments or any secretaries. it allows them to do their thing. And it really does help with expediting some of the custodial processes. It also allows us, we work 10-hour days. We work 4 10-hour days. And this is anyone who's on, a full year salary, 260 days usually. So it's not for folks who are off for the summer. So you have all your administrators plus a handful of secretaries. And it allows us to have Fridays off. And I know we do it at the SAU in Timberlane. And so we put in the long days, but it allows us to have 3-day weekends. We probably do it for 6, depending upon where the weeks fall, 6 to 7 weeks during the summer. We're up and running the second to last and last Friday of the month. So it starts the July 4th week and goes right into the middle of August. So I'm asking permission for us to do that, to grant it, to try it as a trial, to see whether or not it's something that, we want to continue. But I wanted to bring it to your attention. I have the support of most of the administrators. I think all of the administrators who are here, we have the support from that. Secretarial staff, we haven't polled, but I think for most of them, they'll be supportive. There may be a couple who this is going to be a change for, but I'd like to try it if it's okay with you and if you would approve those summer hours.
So what would the 10-hour day be, from when to when?
It's a little flexible depending upon people's needs. So some people come in from 6:30 until 4:30, or they might come in at 7:30 and they work till 5:30. Usually it's the flexibility is what they might need. At least that's how it's worked for the SAU office.
And you say the administrators are in favor of this?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
The longer days? Okay. Because I remember a conversation maybe a couple years ago where administrators were not in favor of that.
That's why we didn't bring it forward.
Okay.
I mean, and I think we're making the commitment for 1 year, so if it doesn't work, we could change it, I would want, it would be nice to have their feedback after a year or after a summer, I guess it's not a full year, and then.
Those of us have tried it in Timberlane. Everyone, after that first year, they were like, wow, this is really nice. Mm-hmm. You have the 3-day weekends. We put a lot of work in, that doesn't change. And for some people, that's tough because they might have other, obligations. But, we change time clock plus, so you don't have an 8-hour, you have a 10-hour. Mm-hmm. Whatever the hours are, it's comparable. Not all our secretaries are on 8-hour days. There might be someone, so it's prorated according to whatever their rates are.
Yes.
And the one benefit I think you've touched upon is the fact that when you have more of a concentrated week like that, you get a lot more done, not for any reason other than the fact that people are already off one day that week. So people aren't taking a Friday off or a Monday off, and you only have 3 days in which to get your work done. The Friday is the day that's off, which means that a lot more people are able to be in on Monday, which makes it a much more productive environment all around. So I don't think you touched upon that, and that's one of the more, I think, important aspects of productivity that I've been able to recognize, is that you have a more concentrated time when people are actually available to work together.
Okay, thank you. There's no more discussion. Do we want to do a motion? All right, a motion to move to summer hour schedule for year-round staff as presented.
So moved.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Any more discussion, or do we just want to vote?
So officially, the schools are closed on Friday.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay, all in favor?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next we're on to policy first read for these. We have 7 policies in front of us. GCF, which is staff hiring. KED, public complaints about facilities or services. LI, relations with educational accreditation agencies. EH, data management. IHAH, world languages program. IHBAA, specific learning disability evaluation. JI, student rights and responsibilities. We're going to take time to look at these. Jason, we do a first read, and if we have any changes or suggestions or notes, they go back to the policy committee, well, even if we don't. Then they come back to us for a second read, and that's when we vote to adopt them.
And anything in blue is the changes that we're making. Most of the time, what you see are sample policies that we get from the School Boards Association, so you'll see some of those changes in there as well. And we've vetted and gone through this through the policy committee, so, which includes some administrators, a teacher, Mrs. Yuzenka. And through the week, if you find something or you have questions, let us know, and we can get the answers for you ahead of time.
Dr. Wilson, on policy IHBAA, we have one of these nice highlighted sections that I like to just have you touch upon here. Is this just because it's a school board association note?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
We also take the opportunity to update the legal references on which this policy is based, and that's always at the bottom of your policy.
I have a motion to move these to second read.
So moved.
I have a second.
Second.
David? Thank you. Any discussions or questions that anybody's seeing with this?
No.
Okay, all in favor of moving the 7 policies that I indicated earlier to second read? Well, yeah, all in favor. Thank you. I forget what I'm saying.
While we're on policies, before we go on, I think just to formalize the request from Mr. Collins about waiving the class size policy, if we could do that, that will allow him to make his numbers for the classrooms and be able to respond to some of these parents. If you would waive class size policy IIB for the purposes of the kindergarten enrollments, I think that would be a prudent thing to do right now. We can always revisit in the summer,
Okay.
in which we always do. We bring that to you in August.
So right now, our policy says 18, is that correct? As our
Yes.
cap for kindergarten?
The state standard is 20.
Okay. Does everyone know what we're doing here? We'd be waiving it to let those classes potentially be higher, right?
Is there a cap on how high they can go?
20.
20?
20's the state.
Yeah, 20 is the state. We would have to come back and give you justification for extending that, and that's when we would have a discussion about other options.
Can I ask Mr. Collins a question?
Yes, you're the chair.
I know.
No.
I know this is nothing you can predict, but how, in general, can you give us like a round number of how many students maybe come in during the summer who haven't yet enrolled for kindergarten?
I think we've been very aggressive to try to get in front of that. The number that I gave you allowed for about a half a dozen that I do anticipate coming in because I have a specific name.
Okay.
Because whenever they make first contact with our school, whether it be through preschool, early interventions and stuff, so that allows us to do that. We even go back to the annual report from 5 years ago and look at that. Typically, during the summer, I will gain at the kindergarten level anywhere from 5 to 6.
Okay.
So if we get to that point in time, there would be a concern.
Okay.
If that does happen, The other thing that will be happening, as soon as I send out these letters, some parents will then make a decision to send their child to another setting. I do anticipate that some of these may go there, but I just wanted to have the flexibility, because parents are bugging me now, they want to know what's happening with my little one. Are they going to be in full-day K, or are we going to the default half-day K, which means many of them need to set up, because they're working families, they need to set up plans for the rest of the day.
Yep. Okay, thank you. Okay, so, oh, we haven't.
Can I just make one correction? It's 25 is the state standard. 20 would be considered a good practice, but according to our policy, it says 25 is the state standard for kindergarten. No, our policy says 18, but it states on there that the state standard is 25. State maximum, the question he was asking. I would never, ever want to do that.
Okay, so can I have a motion to waive policy
IIB.
IIB for kindergarten for the next school year? Second. All in favor?
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, board comments and correspondence. Start with David.
I have none.
Okay.
Thank you.
Go ahead if you do.
I don't want to talk about the SAU meeting. Maybe one of you guys would like to.
Oh, I will.
I'll let you do that.
Okay. First, I did participate in a parent, I don't think this was before our last meeting, I think it was after, the parent panel for the Spotlight School at middle school. And it was great to hear other parents who also were involved in the schools in different ways as coaches, as teachers, to talk about our school, middle school so highly. And one thing that I think might have been in the letter from the Spotlight, but one of the women who was speaking with us that day said, "It always strikes me, and I always know it's a good school, when I would want to send my child there." And she said, "I would want my child here." So it was a great experience. Not such a great experience was the SAU meeting we had last week. Unfortunately, we had SAU board members who decided they were going to throw out the work of months of a search committee for our new assistant superintendent, and did not even let that information be presented in any form. Ultimately, some of us decided not to continue that meeting because we felt that Hampstead's voice had been completely obliterated, both by the abuse of weighted voting that Timberlane has chosen to put in place and continuously uses in every meeting. And while I am willing to let our sister district do what they want to do when it starts to affect Hampstead, I don't feel like, as a Hampstead board, we can continue to let it go. So that's kind of a recap of what we dealt with. If any other board members would like to talk about it, they can, but I felt I needed to address it here. I think that's it for my comments and correspondence.
I think you covered it well. Just be clear, you said members. I want to be clear that it was Timberlane members. A motion was put forth by a Timberlane member to nullify all the work that the search committee had done over several months. Search committee that consisted of board members. Caitlin was on it from our board. Community members, administrators, and staff. We went to that meeting because we were all expecting to have a nominee for the assistant superintendent put in front of us, and we were hoping to meet that person, discuss that person, and hopefully walk away from that meeting with an assistant superintendent in place. person made a Timberlane member made the motion to nullify all that work and restart the committee. So a vote was taken. The democratic way, one vote for one person, that amendment would have been defeated because it was 7-2. All 5 Hampstead members voted to defeat that amendment. But with their call for weighted voting, which they use at every meeting, they use it even to approve minutes. With weighted voting, it failed. A 7-5 Democratic vote failed because they chose to use weighted voting. So we left. It wasn't anticipated or planned that we would leave because we had come thinking we were going to have an assistant superintendent. But we felt, I think, that all of us felt that we had to leave to show support for the search committee who had spent so many hours and volunteer hours working on this. So, yeah, it was a very disappointing evening. And I do feel that it's important that Caitlin brought it up and that people in Hampstead start paying attention and know what's happening at the SAU and what's happening to their representation at the SAU board level. We continue to still pay our 23% for the SAU services that we get, yet we actually have no say anymore. So I just wanted to put that out there. And on a better note, I attended the third grade concert and art show, which was always wonderful. It's a fine example of how we integrate the arts into our STEAM model that we use here in Hampstead. Kudos to Amanda Stark and Mike Torelli and all the other fine, very creative people who help put this together every year. So I attended that, and that was great. I'm done.
Just want to say thank you all for the warm welcome. I do appreciate it. And I was also at the third grade art show and chorus concert, and it was very well put together. It was a very enjoyable evening. Everyone involved did a wonderful job, especially the kids.
Thank you. I'm going to amend my comments. I attended the 4th grade multicultural, and if I forget about that, I'm going to be in trouble.
Yes.
I'm throwing David in there, too.
Yes, I have the video proving that we were there.
Wonderful, as always, the cost, and I have to speak to, I know the volunteers at Central School are so heavily involved in that, with costumes for all of the kids, and including all of the teachers and the Unified Arts teachers for a collaborative experience. So we attended that as well. Thank you.
Can I amend my comments as well?
Yep.
To piggyback on last week's discussion that we had at the SAU board, there were a number of things that I think are worthy of comment. I know for myself, I was pretty upset from it because I saw that there were some lies that were spread. I saw integrity questions and dialogue that I questioned some of the board members about what they were saying on behalf of the entire SAU and the process that was followed. I understand that they don't agree with the process, but we followed a policy. We as a collective team, and I know I still had questions for the superintendent. I had questions about the process that I was hoping to ask on behalf of the Hampstead community, and because we didn't even get to that part, I think that there's a true harm to this process. I think there's a true harm to who, let's say the members that we're going to see, the candidates for the assistant superintendent that is in the pool now, because I would imagine that the top pool has been taken, and that as we go to approach more assistant superintendents, we may not get that cream of the crop. We may, but as you can imagine, most of those that have applied have already part of a contract, and part of anybody that we're going to be interviewing we're not going to get those key candidates any further. So I think it is quite the detrimental harm to Hampstead. And I think that's one thing that upsets me as both a board member as well as someone in the community, that we don't get the cream of the crop now. So thank you.
Thank you. Personnel report.
Yes, in your packet, we have two items that we need to, that are on the personnel report. Number one is a resignation from Dr. Clifton Dancy. Often, you know, what we just saw tonight in terms of what he's been doing for the district here for the last 6 years, I believe. We came in at the same time, so we've worked very closely together over the years. And I will, you know, regret the resignation, but he has new opportunities, and we wish him well. The other candidate is, again, a very esteemed special education specialist from the middle school, Lori Ball, who is going to be effectuating her retirement. We wish her much luck and thank for the few years that she's been with us at the middle school. She had a pretty profound career over in Salem and came here for new opportunities and absolutely loved it. So we wish her well as well.
Can I have a motion to accept with regret both the resignation of Dr. Dancy and the retirement of Lori Ball for the personnel report?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? No, we have to vote. All in favor with regret?
Thank you.
Dr. Dancy, thank you for all of your work and all of you've done. Thank you. You will be missed.
I also, in my report, have a couple of items. I wanted you to have the most updated calendar, which shows the last day of school. The last day of school for students is an early release, and that would be on the 18th. And we have a professional development day on the 19th for staff. That's in June. So I wanted you to have the most recent copy there. As far as my attendance in certain meetings, I did attend the Sending School District with Dr. Metzler at Pinkerton Academy with the other superintendents. We talked about graduation, June 10th. Very exciting for all those seniors. We talked about vaping and what an issue that it has become, especially at Pinkerton, like we've seen in many other schools around the area. And the message that kids need to get about vaping, that it's not okay and it's not allowed. We talked a little bit about transportation, the emergency communications and visitor check-in protocol. If you go to Pinkerton, there's a new process. As a matter of fact, I saw Caitlin there when I was trying to
You didn't
cross
have
the
to go
street.
in, though.
Thank you for stopping
Yeah,
for
no
me, by the way. But they do have a new protocol, and you have to go in to their visitor center, and you sign in, and you get a badge, and then you can go to where you're supposed to go to, and then you have to sign out. So it's not a wide-open campus as it used to be. We talked about a sophomore transition day that they're looking to do. We're still working that through with Pinkerton. I think they're still trying to put some plans in place, just like they have freshman orientation the day before school starts. That freshman orientation day is really key for helping those kids transition. They feel as though the sophomores need a little bit of a transition because they're going from freshman academy, where they're pretty much sheltered that whole time, into the bigger campus. And so they'd like to have some opportunity for sophomores to be able to come on the afternoon of that freshman orientation day. So they're coming up with a schedule. We've said we've looked at our transportation and busing. We said we should be able to do it. It might be a little bit more of a cost, but we're working that through with Sandy Hodgkins. So I just wanted you to be aware of that. That's something new that they're trying. Started some initial budgeting conversations. It's never too early to start with Pinkerton. And then we talked about they're going through their NEASC, the New England Association of School and Colleges. They're going through their accreditation process, which is a lot of self-study, and they are right on schedule in terms of that process. I did attend the New Hampshire statewide meeting, New Hampshire Association of School Administrators, and this one is for Champions for Children. And it's a very positive, very powerful meeting, and actually I facilitate it. This is my 5th year facilitating this meeting where we recognize regional winners for those volunteers who service their community and children. So it's a very positive event, and it's always something that you get a lot of good feelings about what's going on in the schools and the people who are volunteering. Attended a regional CIA meeting. Again, we focused mainly, there was a discussion around play-based kindergarten because that is one of the new laws that came out this year. We're already doing a lot of that, but it's just another way you focus the instruction through a little bit more structured play as opposed to worksheets. You know, in kindergarten, you want to incorporate a lot more demonstration and actual lessons that are more interactive and engaging. So we had some conversation about that. You all saw the water lead testing results that we've posted on the website. This is something, a new compliance requirement coming down through the state. Most schools are going through it, and you also received the same information from Pinkerton Academy. So most of the information that you received, you saw that none of our drinking fountains were affected. Anything that had a little bit higher reading was due to the fact that they're old and probably haven't been used in years. But in any case, they're taken offline until we have a fix for that. Federal grants, I wanted you to see in your packet, there's another 24-page packet for you. Every year we have to assure that we are meeting the federal guidelines for our grants. And in the past, we've been able to just sign them from the superintendent's perspective. In the last couple of years, the State Department is requiring that we inform the board. Last year, they asked for the board chair's signature, which was the first time that had ever happened. This year, they're not asking for the signature, but they are asking to make sure that you are informed of what we have to promise as far as the provisions for receiving federal grants. And I just bring to your attention the grants that we receive are Title I, and there are 18 provisions outlined in this document that we have to follow. Those of us that have managed Title I know those provisions. And that's what our job is. We know what all those provisions mean. So I just want you to know, as you go through it, if you have any questions, you can either call me or you can call Doris. We can answer any of those questions for you. Title II is about professional development, and there are 5 provisions, and those are the ones that start with B. The Title II grant is really for staff professional development, and also if we want to use the money to support any type of professional development for teams like professional learning communities and things like that for instruction. Title III, we do not get any monies, and that's for ESOL, which is English Language Learners. We don't receive any money for that, so we don't have to worry about that one. Title IV is for the innovative and technology grants. There are 6 provisions, and if you look through your packet, again, we have to follow those provisions as well. And then IDEA, that's the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and that's our special education law. There's one big provision that's about a page long if you read through it. And that one I know that Karen Gallagher is very proficient with in terms of making sure that the grant activities are complying with those assurances. So I wanted to bring them to your attention to also get in the minutes that, yes, we did notify you and educate you on the provisions. If you have any questions, let us know. I would like us to be able to move forward and get our grants written and approved, and this will help us in that next step. So if you would formally just assure that you've seen the provisions and allow us to apply for the grants, that would be great.
Do we need a motion?
I don't know, but let's put one in.
All right, great. Can we have a motion to state that we have seen these and been informed of them.
And to go ahead and
Apply for the grants.
apply for the grants.
Apply for the grants. Somebody say so moved.
So moved.
Perfect.
You got that?
Yeah. Second.
Second.
And just so you know, the money that we're talking about for Title I, about $58,000. We use that for tutoring at the elementary school, and it's always about students who are in need of either reading or math supports. For Title II, we get about $45,000. It doesn't go a long way, but it certainly helps when we're able to use it for some specific things like some of these performance assessments or training, sending them to the quality performance assessment. That's how we use some of this money. And then Title IV, it's a little bit less, probably about $25,000. And we will come to you when we get those grants written and let you know what those activities include.
I think we have to vote.
I just had a question.
Yes.
How do we go about evaluating what grants we're going to apply for? Like, is there a laundry list of them and we go through those, or is that, like, how does that work?
There are certain grants that flow through from the federal government into the states. There are very few that come. Every district gets either 1, 2, 3, and 4. Those are the ones that we get. The Title III, because we don't get any money, we don't certainly apply.
Right.
But those are the ones that we get. There are some that are for districts, in need, 21st Century Learning Grants, for example, which you have to meet a certain criteria and benchmark for free and reduced lunch or low income.
Got it.
So we don't, it usually goes to a larger district like a Manchester, a Nashua, Laconia, someone like that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any more questions? All right, all in favor?
Thank you. That's all I have. If you want to approve the finance documents, if they've been going around.
Yes.
Okay.
I think those are done.
We've done that.
And then to just receive the consent agenda as a motion.
Yes. Can I have a motion to accept the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Thank you.
I don't think there's any old or other business, unless anyone has anything they wanted to bring up, in which case I am going to look for a motion to go into non-public. We're going to be going in under RSA 91A:3 to paragraph 2, C and K, which is reputation and legal.
Thank you.
Can I have a motion?
Motion. Second.
Second. Melissa, can you pull the board, please?
Yes. Mrs. Parnell?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mrs. Yusenka?
Yes.
And Mr. Giard?
Yes.
Thank you.
And cable, we will not be, you're free to go. We're not coming back out with any decision.